Good afternoon. This is Peter Irish from the Barrett Group, and I'm very pleased to have Colleen McKenna here from Intero Advisory. She is the CEO and founder. Colleen, I wonder if you would introduce yourself, please.
Happy to. Peter, it's good to be with you today and everyone who's listening. I'm Colleen McKenna, and as the CEO and founder of Intero Advisory, I really lead the strategy for our company. We will be 10 years old at the end of January of 2021, which is pretty exciting. We help companies and individuals navigate LinkedIn for business development, branding, and recruiting purposes. And over the course of the last 10 years, we've worked with tens of thousands of individuals and more than 700 companies to help them achieve results using LinkedIn as a platform.
And of course, LinkedIn has grown enormously in that time. I mean, it's now what, almost 600 million or something business contacts worldwide. So what a great place to be, Colleen.
Absolutely. I actually feel like 2020 is sort of LinkedIn's third inflection point. When I started in 2011, people were just trying to figure out LinkedIn. They were starting to take it a little bit more seriously. 2016, they were purchased by Microsoft. That was definitely an inflection point for LinkedIn. And I think 2020 was as well, because more people turned to LinkedIn for especially business development and sales and career, for sure.
Of course. Well, thank you for that introduction. Now, let's think a little bit. There was one major event in 2020. The coronavirus made its debut. How did that impact you or your industry or your business?
Well, for our business, we are pretty much always working virtually. So we do a lot on Zoom, as we're doing today. And so for us to move to a remote situation was pretty quick and pretty easy. It took us about 90 minutes to go home and set up studios in our homes. And so we've been using virtual tools and training that way really for the last, 6-7 years. We've been on Zoom for the last 5 years. So for us, it wasn't nearly as difficult. We had many, many clients, though, that I think we actually added a whole lot of value to our engagement with them, because we helped them figure out some of these ways that they could be interacting with their clients. And certainly what we saw, people who had been trained previously were saying, okay, can you remind me what to do now? I'm not a road warrior anymore. So I need to be doing some of the things that you taught me to, because now I have to interact virtually with my prospects and clients, or I'm now looking for a new job. We talked with a lot of people who were reorganized out of their company as a result of COVID, people at the top of their profession. And so we spent a lot of time talking with them about how to position themselves online, update their LinkedIn profiles to start to look for a new position, even during COVID. So even during COVID, people were actively looking for new jobs and pursuing new business opportunities on the sales side.
Well, we've certainly seen that. There's been a huge amount of activity at the executive level, in spite of what sounds like a dire situation. And speaking to retailers, for example, I've talked with a number of retailers. There were short-term impacts like toilet paper being out of stock and that sort of thing, which they recovered relatively quickly logistically. And then longer-term impacts with other industries. I mean, for example, the entertainment industry or the cruise ship industry, or famously the airlines, have all suffered tremendously because of the reduction in travel. How do you see the ongoing impacts of COVID in your business, in your industry?
Well, I think it will, in our business, really the coaching and the training aspect. So I always distinguish that we are not a social media agency. Most people want to think about LinkedIn as social media. I do not. It's a business tool. So I position us as a coaching and training company where we also, serve as consultants to help people and companies advance their initiatives on LinkedIn. But where I see training, I think more and more people and more companies see the value of training. And because of the rapid change that they experienced in 2020, will have a better grasp of the importance of training, because especially using technology and platforms like LinkedIn, many companies who have been sort of reticent or slower to emerge and use new technologies have learned, hey, we actually did it. We did it pretty well. We really need to continue to amp up and make sure that the people on our teams are well versed in using applications such as LinkedIn or any, even Zoom or whatever it might be. So I think that even for companies who did not, who had a really difficult time, I think that they learned that they have to help their employees be as strong and well-versed in as many things as they possibly can.
Well, that fits well with what I've been hearing from other companies. I mean, one of the things I noticed is that The Economist quoted McKinsey saying that we made 5 years worth of progress in terms of digitalization and moving online in 8 months this year because of the situation. Everybody had to, sink or swim, essentially.
Right.
And I've heard that from others, that really generalists who are flexible are very much in demand at the moment. But are there any specific transferable skills that seem to be in demand as far as you can see from your perspective?
Well, one, I always say it's just having a really open mind, right? You have to figure out how, if you're moving from hospitality to technology or healthcare, you can take those skills and think about how they served the company and how you employed them in your current role and how they can fit for another company. And I think that a lot of times people overlook what they're really good at or the difference that they've made in a past position. So we work with a lot of people on their LinkedIn profiles, and we'll be interviewing them, and I'll be like, well, what about this? Or tell me a little bit about that. And they're like, oh, that's not important. Oh, I think it's actually important. So I think sometimes people underestimate those skills that they just take for granted. Like, doesn't everybody do that? Or can't everybody analyze data this way? No. So people don't tend to think about those talents, the skills, the experience in ways that really calls them to attention so that other people can say, oh, we might need that on our team.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. An external perspective always shines a different light, doesn't it?
Well,
Now,
I think that people are sort of like, it's just who I am. And I'm like, well, that's pretty awesome, right?
I
You should
heard,
let people know that.
yeah, absolutely. Be yourself, to thine own self be true. I
Mhm.
was talking to one of the heads of recruiting from T-Mobile,
Mhm.
and she was saying basically she thought industry experience was much less important these days than the, let's call them soft skills of being curious and a good communicator and maybe a little bit analytical. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I recently was invited by a client to talk to some of her peers. And she said, these are pretty senior level marketing people from some top companies in the country. And they're now looking for jobs. They're well into their career. And when we got on the call and they all introduced themselves, one of their observations was, "Ooh, it's kind of interesting. All of us are pretty senior level in our companies, in pretty large companies. Wow, I might not find a position in a similar type of company, similar size company, probably not the same industry. I'm going to have to think about all of this differently." And what in the course of our conversation, they realized was that they actually have a lot of the necessary skills, but they're going to have to really approach a job search very differently. They're going to have to build their networks very differently than they have in the past. And they're going to have to get really down to the basics and learn more of the fundamentals, right? Because they're really strong on the strategy piece. They ran teams, but they might not necessarily know all the buttons to push. And so they have to do a little bit of learning, but when they realize that, they're up for it. So I do think it's, once again, looking at who you are and where you can apply it to a different industry, different type of company, different size of company.
Well, and Our clients essentially land, about 75% of our clients land through what we call the unpublished market. So jobs that are not advertised, essentially.
Mhm.
And LinkedIn is a very, very important tool for that, but it's also a tool in flux. I mean, if you don't mind my going slightly off the reservation here, you've been watching the evolution of LinkedIn for some time. What recent changes have you seen that you consider helpful in that regard? And is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, this year there has been a lot of, I would say, kind of a change in how people want to approach LinkedIn. People want to automate everything, and we're sort of anti automators, if you will, because we see where it goes wrong more than where it goes right. I think the value of a network and what you just mentioned, that unpublished market, is so important. You really only learn about those jobs in that unpublished market by talking to or being connected to other people, by having great networks, by working with people like you and your team, where they are privy to that information and that connection. That social capital that you build is so important. So when people say to me, I really want to automate, or I'm just going to connect with everybody, it really doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't resonate with LinkedIn either. It's just that there are lots of tools out there right now that people think sound magical, and it's going to make it so much easier. And I don't think taking a shortcut on building a strategic network and really getting to know the people in your network, I think it's more important than ever.
Mm, great. So let's talk briefly about your own career. You've been doing this for 10 years. Tell us about how you got where you are and anything that you might find interesting and useful for this audience about your own evolution.
Well, I would say that my evolution is really always has been about trying to understand what might be next. So I started in sales. I've always been in sales. I love the sales profession. I love learning about other businesses. I was in very mature industries like printing and publishing. And in 2004, I was working for a regional publisher, and I logged into LinkedIn, and I remember the CEO saying to me in probably 2005, "Hey, have you sold anything on that thing called LinkedIn?" No, the answer was really easy. No, nobody knew what to do on LinkedIn, but I recognized that it could be really powerful. And I took over a VP of sales position for a very large printing company outside of the Washington, D.C. area, and worked with a young sales team where they had no networks and they were not from the area. And I'm like, we're going to have to try to build your networks really, really quickly. And we saw that they actually closed more new business in a year than the seasoned salespeople did. So from that moment, and that was probably 2010, I realized, there's probably some opportunity here. And at the end of 2010, coming out of that recession, I lost my job. I was very clear with the leadership team of that company that strategy for printing was really around price. That was not a popular answer. I lost my job at the end of 2010. In 2011, I started to think about how I would just start my own business and doing some consulting. I didn't really want to be a straight up sales trainer or sales coach. So people started asking me about LinkedIn. So I basically took a lot of questions about LinkedIn. I did lunch and learns. I really reinvented everything I was doing and found a lot of, was really happy to do that. So I would say that at any point in anyone's career, thinking about what you can do differently or seeing where there might be an opportunity, and is there a market of people who are interested in learning more about something or working with you in a way. We all have to reinvent. We all have to change what we're doing at some point and think about how we can create new opportunities for ourselves and our families. So my encouragement would be, sometimes you have to learn the expertise, but it can certainly be done.
Well, it sounds to me like you know how to make lemonade when life hands you lemons. So well done,
I do
Colleen.
try.
Any last reflections for people who might be looking for another engagement, another opportunity, or temporarily out of work? Any thoughts of any words of encouragement?
Right. Well, I would say you really do need to master understanding how to build a really great network. I am so grateful for my network and have been for the last 25 years. And that network becomes a referral engine, and how you present yourself online, how you bring out your authentic self, how you highlight who you are, and then combine that with a really strong network, um, really can make a difference as you're thinking about your career, as you're making a career change. I don't know anybody who's made a career change that has not at some point in the conversation said, so and so, or somebody I talked to mentioned, right? To your point, that unpublished market is really, really key for so many people. And I think for all people, but you need to put some work into that area to make sure that you're also contributing to your network. So it's kind of this reciprocal engine that you create, but there's nothing more powerful.
That's great. What a wonderful ending note. So thank you so much, Colleen, for your time today. It was a great pleasure, and I wish you a very happy new year and great success in 21.
And to you as well.
Thank you.